Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, we're going to take up S64 again. This is a committee meeting, by the way, the Senate Government Operations Committee, and it is Wednesday, February 26th. With due apologies to a witness that we had scheduled for, I think, the 14th of March. We're going to take the vote today on the optometry bill. My reason for doing that is we have to get it from here down the hall to Health and Welfare. And I want to at least give Senator Lyons an amount of time to try to finish the process and get it to the floor in time to meet crossover without having to ask for an extension. So again, due apologies, but that's what I've decided to do. So is everybody comfortable here in the committee with voting this out today? Does anybody have any lingering doubts, questions, statements to make?
It's about time.
Well, that's a statement. Okay, Senator Hart, if you would call the roll.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Hart. Senator.
Would you let us know how you voted? Just
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Colmar.
yes. Okay, so the Melissa will be down from the Secretary of the Senate's office so that tomorrow, if this goes through the way I hope it will, I'll be able to stand up on the floor in the morning or in the afternoon and move to suspend rules to consider this committee's report intact and send it along to Health and Welfare. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a
Well
great
done.
time. And then I think yeah. This person.
What's that great rock and roll song? Oh, what is it?
I know.
Right.
If I, oh no.
I do.
You're an attorney.
Yeah,
You
it's
can
not Rolling
sit
Stones.
there.
It's.
I can, no, I'm not
yeah.
the attorney. No, that's not the.
Is it Bob?
Somebody. Tom Jones.
Okay, we're going to switch gears and talk about S59, the act relating to amendments to Vermont's meeting law. And Maura, I would invite you to join us at the table and give us your testimony. Maura is the Executive Director of the Vermont Housing Finance Agency.
I am, and so for the record, I'm Maura Collins. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Housing Finance Agency. This is my first time ever testifying in this committee. And so I think I know most of you, but VHFA is a quasi-state agency. We were created 50 years ago by this body, the legislature, and our specific purpose is to finance and promote affordable, safe, and decent housing for low and moderate income Vermonters. So we do not receive any state appropriations for our operations. The legislature gave us the ability to sell tax exempt bonds, and we use the proceeds from those bonds to make mortgages to people buying a home or to developers of affordable rental housing. And we take the proceeds of those loans we make and we pay back our bondholders. And that's how we are able to operate without any operational support from the state. I also just want to make a note that despite the fact it's being known in this building as a housing finance expert, I actually went to college to be a journalist, and I have a long family, a lot of journalists in my family. My grandfather was the dean of the journalism program at St. Mike's, and I have active journalists in my family. I won't mention because they're journalists, but my point is that I am a true believer in open meeting laws. And so VHFA is largely fine with the open meeting law changes that happened a year ago. We have been doing our meetings hybrid since the pandemic. And so having them be recorded when we're in our boardroom and all that is absolutely fine. And I think actually really helps people have access to the information of what we're doing. I'll say we are an organization that rarely goes into executive session. It is often once a year for the board to discuss my personal performance since I'm their one employee. And then I hire everyone from there. But otherwise, we don't use that provision very much. The one thing that had changed last year that we did not realize, so I did not testify on it last year, was that in the various changes that happened, I know you all know this, that there are advisory bodies and there's non-advisory bodies. And so we are hold on, I'll get this right. We are a non-advisory body, state level non-advisory body, because obviously there's local level ones. But by being a state level non-advisory body, that is because the way the definition is written up, our VHFA's board does vote on a budget for our agency. These are not state appropriated dollars. This is the operations of VHFA so that we can keep the lights on, but technically they do vote on a budget. And because the word budget's in there, it means that they are non-advisory, they are a legit board. What we realized when scheduling our annual board retreat last fall was that we were no longer going to be able to hold a retreat. And so we had to cancel it because what a board retreat looks like for VHFA is that our 9-member board, which is largely appointed by the governor, a few ex officios, like the state treasurer, they gather and we do site visits and we pick a community, move it around the state and we tour that. And there was no way to, I'll say meaningfully, materially zoom that meeting while we're walking down the street. Oftentimes it involves construction sites. There's no way someone could really listen in on 9 people who get spread out by a block and a half as they walk from a property to the next and all. And so we currently feel like we don't have the ability to do site visits of our board. We try to have workarounds. They would not have met with pass the straight face test or the letter of the law. Do we have pairs of people go visit sites? But, you know, this involves sometimes tenants will be generous enough to open up their units and we can walk through apartments. We talk with the residents. The idea of bringing a camera crew to you post this on YouTube was a bit much that we didn't feel like we could or should do. Although kudos to the tenants who are usually fine with a dozen of us walking into their units, but a little different when it's all public. And so I want to be clear. I'm not trying to get out of open meeting law or having the meeting hybrid. I think makes great sense. And we've figured out a way to post them online and all, but it is holding us back to doing the work of our agency. And so there are many ways you could probably fix this. When we identified this problem, we reached out to our other quasi-state agency partners. And so what I would call sister agencies of ours are the Economic Development Authority, VEDA, VSAC, the Vermont Bond Bank, the Vermont State Housing Authority, Vermont Housing Conservation Board, there's probably more, but these are organizations. And there were other concerns that I think you're going to hear about from other entities who have other issues. And the clean, easy way to address the issue we recommend is that since the budgetary authority these agencies have are not state tax dollars, if we could look at that word budget, have it be something like state budget or general funds or something like that. But to cut budget, that's the problem, that we are non-advisory because that word budget. So our recommended edit was to get rid of the word budget, and therefore it would move us out of that state non-advisory category. And it would allow us to go back to having site visits, and it would probably solve the issues that you're going to hear about from the other witnesses.
Senator Bianski.
I am aware of this issue. It was an oversight in the back and forth. I don't know how much attention you paid to the many hours of conversation, probably. Yeah. In our original language, we had a site visit exemption.
Yeah.
That I have actually already asked to put back into, I'm not talking council about putting that back in, which I believe would also solve is the issue that you have.
So would that apply, I mean, when we do a board retreat, when we drive to Brattleboro was the most recent one, we do an overnight. So how do we handle?
Well, so there's two exemptions that we've sort of dealt with, that we've talked about. One of them is in existence for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And that is a deliberative meeting exemption, which sort of allows for like the logistical conversations to not have, because for that board, if we didn't have that exemption, they would have to stream 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, because their mission is always together. And sometimes it's like talking about an email or scheduling a meeting. And so we carved that out and we very explicitly talked about what deliberative meetings were. And then what we asked for is if they are under the utilizing that deliberative meeting exemption, that they do a for a short accounting of what happened during that time. So we could certainly, I think, probably create that piece. But then there was also the site visit exemption that was very explicit. Like if you're not in your boardroom and you're out in the field, you don't have to be hybrid, because you're absolutely right. Taking a camera crew with you into people's apartments would be problematic.
But I think it also, just to tag on to, because we passed it out of here with an exemption of site visits. Which is why I always forget.
I thought it was in there.
There's a local exemption. I'll
Yes,
part of the town.
But I
we
think,
could-
I don't think it matters if it's an overnight or
Yeah.
not. I just can't even imagine it. It's a site visit. It may be a couple of days. I don't think it matters. It's a site visit.
and the language exists because it was in the original
Exactly.
bill. It just somehow in all the back and forth got left on the cutting room floor, which was, so when this was actually brought to my attention, I was like, no, there's an exemption for that. And then when we combed through, we were like, oh, it somehow didn't make it. So my suggestion was that we put that back.
And so site visit would be defined in some way too, because you're saying, well, obviously the overnight and obviously, so I'm just wondering how that would.
But why
guess
does
we'd
it
see the
matter if it's
language.
multiple days? It's still a site visit.
Okay.
So if it's a long site visit, you spend the night, it's still a site visit.
Okay.
Do we have access to that language?
I could
Yes.
probably go find it, but I've also, and I know Tucker's not in the building today, but I've also asked him to dig it back up so he can
Yeah.
bring it to us whenever we start doing markup of the bill. And I'm certainly happy to ask him to send it your way to take a look at it. That's helpful.
Yeah, I think, because we identified this with Tucker earlier that this.
Yes.
is the problem.
I have had this conversation. I feel like
I
a
know,
lot.
so, yeah, I know, we've had this.
But it was never, at least it was not our intention to put it site.
I thought it was there.
So that's my primary concern is that, but like I said, in these conversations, we've been talking with other partners. And so I'm happy to,
And many of them seem to be in the room.
yeah, so I just want to make sure that if this carves out my issue, that there's still time to talk about other people's issues.
Yes, and I think we've heard from at least one of the other folks, and it actually
So,
seems like
but
their understanding of the application was not the same as our legislative councils. And so they sort of came to the conclusion that the law already works. So I also think there's some misunderstanding in some
Okay.
places, but our intention certainly is not to make it so people can't do their work, but we,
Yeah.
like you, really want it to be
Okay.
transparent.
Because I know that I'll just preempt, I know that, so our general counsel, we did talk to, I think folks have engaged with Senator Hardy about this and different things. One of the things that I know there is an exemption at some point, I think at the local level for undue expense or whatever. And I know their general counsel is very nervous about that because we're a financing agency. So
Yeah.
one could make an argument that we could hire a camera crew for an afternoon. And so I do know that I hope that doesn't become the solution that people land on, because we could put that money to housing or we could put it toward broadcasting meetings, and I'd rather put it to housing.
No, I'm certainly, as someone who fought really hard for that open meeting bill, I actually hoped it would be stronger than it was. I am fully committed to putting the site visit exemption back and working with you to make sure it does what we need it to do.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Does anyone else have questions for Maura? And does that sound like it works? Okay, good. We might have the first one out here.
Although you're talking to a journalist / housing person and not
Yeah.
a lawyer, so I'd love to
Yeah.
turn to the others who say if it were. So,
But we have, I think the LCT, so there are a bunch of them that have other issues, I
Indeed.
think.
mhm.
Thanks, Mark.
Mhm.
Let's go to the screen, and John Potter, who's the town manager in Brattleboro, is with us. Welcome in, John.
Thanks, Chair Collmore. Appreciate being with you.
Do you know everybody here on the table or on the?
No, I don't think I do.
Senator Larry Hart, Orange County.
All of Orange County. There it is. Allison Clarkson, I represent the Windsor County District.
Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District.
Jillian, media assistant.
Tanya Mihovsky, Chittenden Central District.
And I'm Becca White, and I'm the Windsor County District other member, and you should know your Senator, Wendy Harrison is also here. Yes.
So, talk to us, John, please.
Yeah. Thank you all. Chair Collmore, members of the committee. Last year, when the open meeting law was updated, we understood that the intent was not to require the large annual town meetings to be hybrid meetings. But here we are, we're facing a legal interpretation that says Brattleboro's representative town meeting, a unique structure, now has to operate in two places at once, in person in Brattleboro High School gym and online with with members of the body. This doesn't work. Brattleboro's 138 elected town meeting members gather to deliberate and vote on the town's most important decisions every year. Running a hybrid version of this meeting presents significant logistical issues and hurdles, delays in vote tallying, lost time switching between platforms, questions on keeping a quorum, and serious challenges to maintaining attendance and the integrity of the debate. We need a fix, and we asked the legislature, your committee, to consider exempting representative town meetings from this hybrid requirement. Without this clarification, the law creates unnecessary confusion and an unfunded mandate that's really unworkable for our town. Brattleboro really values transparency and accessibility, and we're not opposed to innovation at all. But in this case, the possibility of hybrid meetings does not work for our process, and we urge you to consider making this simple, necessary change. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that was really what I came to tell you.
So I'm getting the feel, you said you meet in a gymnasium?
Yes, in the Brattleboro High School gym.
All 138 of them.
Yeah. Senator Bihovsky.
So,
We're looking at each other in a very puzzled fashion.
Well,
because we thought we accepted you.
no, we didn't, and I don't think we should.
We had long discussions about it. I don't know why.
Well, we had long discussions about town meeting not being a public body, but being a meeting of the public.
Yes.
But if you elect people to represent you, then it is a public body. And frankly, I think it should be hybrid and the public should be able to engage in either. I mean, we stream and create a hybrid system for our General Assembly of 150 members because those are people represented to vote on my behalf. I don't think it's the same thing as a group of the public gathering to vote from the floor for themselves.
Right, because they are elected.
Exactly.
Wendy, why don't you join us at the
Thank you.
table? You might be able to help.
Thank you. Yes, can
Since you
I?
probably have attended this.
I have, and just if I can tell you a little story.
Sure.
The first
Introduce
time,
yourself.
oh,
first.
Wendy Harrison, resident of Brattleboro, and now senator representing that area. So the first time I came to Vermont was in the 80s, and I was in a graduate program for local government management. And we actually came up here as a field trip to see town meeting and to see representative town meeting. And I was just shocked at how effective it was and how personal it was. I was from California at the time. I had never seen anything like that. And my understanding of how Brattleboro got into representative town meeting was it's a relatively large town for Vermont. And instead of going to a Australian ballot when the population increased, the thought was to elect a large amount of representatives, and those representatives only meet that one time, just a town meeting. They're elected on town meeting day, so they'll be elected the 1st of March. And it's 130 or 120 people.
138.
So it's a relatively large meeting, and it's always been public. It was on television before streaming was around. So it's always been, accessible and public. The way it's structured, because only those folks are allowed to vote. So anyone can come to the meeting, but there's a road, which other town meetings have too. There's a physical barrier so that only, the folks who are members of town meeting, of representative town meeting can vote. And having that physical barrier translated into a barrier online is really hard. So that's the problem. And they tried, they did a hybrid meeting, I think it was 3 years ago. And it was really challenging because
During COVID.
during COVID, because you weren't sure that the folks who were voting were the right people voting. And I liken it to the Senate when we have people who are participating remotely, we know who they are, right? They're on the screen, we see their face, they have to show us their face before they vote. Imagine doing that with 30 people. We also, there's also, it's in town, people know months in advance, they know a year in advance when it's going to be. So it's in an accessible place. It's very, very difficult to do that in a hybrid way, because you can't be sure who's voting. There's not integrity of the vote. Do you want me to explain it more?
I'm just not sure how there's not integrity of the vote. I mean, we have 150 House members that were virtual and have done hybrid and.
Right, but it wasn't a good way to have a meeting either. I mean, you have one member per screen in the House. I think is what you did. What can happen, this is not as controlled of a situation. So there can be like 3 or 4 people. People can be texting each other. The whole point of this kind of meeting is to make good decisions together and to listen to each other and to do that in the public. So the public has access. They have access on streaming, on TV, and in person. But the beauty of the meeting where people actually tell each other what they're talking about, like me now, right? You can understand more of what I'm saying because I'm here, and I can understand more of what you're saying because you're here. It's just a better process, and it would be a shame to harm it.
Senator Clark?
So I think what I hear, I think it certainly would be possible, but you don't have the infrastructure for it. I don't think your gym, it has the ability. I mean, we have the ability in the House chamber for 150 people to be heard, to have a dialogue. And I've seen those of us who served in the House have had many fruitful exchanges with a lot of people in the room, still having good conversation and discussing an issue. But we have the infrastructure to support that conversation and that dialogue with 150 people. And what I'm hearing you say is that you don't have that infrastructure that would make it workable in a hybrid fashion or even in a remote fashion. It strikes me that maybe the House chamber might extend its facilities to the town of Brattleboro for your representative town day, and you could actually use the House chamber for your meeting.
Well, we do have space for people to be in one room. I mean, that's.
Yeah, but you don't have the microphones and you don't have the cameras and the stuff that we have upstairs that would make it possible for you to do a hybrid meeting.
Right. So are you saying the House has had hybrid meetings in the House chamber?
They have them every day.
Okay.
Right now, they are having a
agree.
hybrid meeting.
Okay. So I don't know how many people I haven't experienced that.
150.
Right. 150 are in the room.
Not
which
always.
Okay. So we did do at least one meeting hybrid. I don't know if we've done more. John can speak to that, but it was very confusing. It was not as secure. I mean, that's a problem. We can't make sure the right people are voting. We don't have the equipment for that because they're at their homes.
You
or
can't
other
make them
places.
be on screen and identify themselves before they vote?
And some of the votes they're standing up kind of votes too. So, it's just, it's not ideal and it's actually harmful, to this process. I wish you would watch one of the RTNs. I mean, we have them online if you want to see one. And just one thing, I would just only, the way some of the language was presented to you, there was requests for just a general exemption. I think the exemption should only be for representative town meeting.
Yeah, we discussed it last year.
It's actually in the bill
Yeah.
right now. Wendy, if I can ask you this, you say it's being televised,
Yes,
but is there an ability for someone to actually interact, like ask a question and get an answer the way that we would be able to do on Zoom?
they have to come to the meeting
Okay.
to do that. That's like any regular town meeting.
Senator White, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off either. Why don't
I'm
you-
sorry, and
Yeah, no, no,
John
no.
Potter might have some.
I have a general question.
Yeah, the difference between the regular town meeting though and this is these are people that have been elected to represent others versus people voting for themselves. It's 1% of the population of Brattleboro that is speaking for the entire town. And furthermore, I'm pretty sure the hybrid requirement only applies to state level non-advisory meetings.
That would be wonderful if that's the case.
Like, my
because the
intent had
hybrid-
always been that it would apply to all local meetings, but we have heard that that would be impossible.
It is hard.
I thought Ruth,
It doesn't seem accessible to me if you have to go there. What if I don't have a car? What if I can't find childcare? What if I am sick?
Actually, we have childcare. There's food. A year in advance of the date, people bring each other there. It's a real collaborative, it's collaborative in its structure, but then we do debate very fiercely too. I mean, it's not as if it's only one group who comes there. It's a very effective dialogue.
We just cleared significant testimony from people, particularly people with disabilities, that having a hybrid option is incredibly important for this type of participation.
Oh, I understand. But we also, in that Brattleboro, we work to include those folks and give them a run.
Folks who potentially have an immune condition that would make it problematic for them to be in a big crowded space.
Actually, when you mentioned that, I think it was last year, John, I expect it would happen this year too. There's an area where the chairs are very far apart from each other, just to make sure that everyone's comfortable.
Did you have a question?
Oh, I think,
But perhaps.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Collmore. I understand what the senator is talking about. The thing is that this is the only unique situation like this in the state. Every other town meeting in the state does not have this requirement. And so, the way a town meeting is conducted in Vermont is disrupted by this potential requirement. And I do understand that it is not a state advisory public body. However, there is, I understand, a clause in there for requesting electronic access, which is the big issue here. We normally would not do it. It would just be if there was a request, and that's why the need to clarify that this is not a typical public body.
Senator White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say I totally hear what you're saying, Senator. I think you have a really unique, special meeting that is unlike anything we have in any other part of the state and has a real kind of almost like beauty to it. It's a cultural institution. I have had many conversations with folks who have participated and have had the conviviality of the whole experience really impact them personally. So I don't want us to shake up how you have to do it in a serious way when we're already giving exemption to town meetings. So I am in favor of having the language remain in the bill and not having it be removed as suggested. But I do think that we should revisit it at some point. I think the exemption, if you do have the capacity and ability to do it, or technology advances to a place where you can. Because even the idea of like having a microphone pass around, it's extremely hard, even in those situations, to get real time on the floor things going without the level of IT support that's needed, even in a body of 150 upstairs with a built environment architecturally designed for it. So I'm in favor of keeping the language in.
Senator Bielanski.
So I do have a question for you, but also I do want to clarify, we do not exempt town meeting. They are not a meeting of a public body. They're a meeting of the.
But we do, in Rootsville, there is a special exemption, I thought.
It's specifically.
It's just for Brattleboro. So every other town meeting does not fall under open meeting law because they're not a meeting of a public body. Because the Brattleboro meeting is done by elected people, it is a public body. It is
Yeah.
fundamentally different.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, so my point is that the town, wait, hold on. Town meeting, you have to have fully hybrid?
No.
No,
town
okay, that's
meeting
what I'm
is-
saying, yes.
But it's not an exemption.
Yeah,
Town meeting, because it is the public all showing up to a
Okay,
place,
yes.
is not a public body.
let me rephrase. Town meetings don't have to do it.
Correct.
Because they're not a public body. They're not
Yeah,
elected.
it's not an exemption. They don't have to do it.
Correct.
This is their town meeting.
But they elect these
So-
folks, so
so-
it's different.
Yes, but I want to clarify, I understand now it's not an exemption, it's built into the law. And I think that's good, and I think it should be built into the law that this group is too.
So we are then saying to the residents of Brattleboro that they don't get to ask for an electronic, like they are not as protected as members from other towns who can reach out to their public officials and say, we would like to attend remotely.
They have a select board. They have a different group of people that they can do that for.
But
So-
this is an elected group that can now meet without granting them that access. It's not the same as our other town meetings.
Is there an informational meeting maybe before?
There is an informational
Okay.
meeting, and that's hybrid. Right, John? It's hybrid. Oh, and
Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you, Senator Collmore. No, the informational meeting is broadcast, but it's not a hybrid meeting. The select board does have interactive hybrid meetings every other week, and that's where most of the legislation is done in Brattleboro. The representative town meeting is like the town meetings in every other town where the representatives can come and, unlike other towns, they are representatives, as the senator mentioned. However, a big concern that we have is the time that it takes to call a vote on every single question, every single article, if it was to be a hybrid approach. And we feel like that is going to, we've already heard from representatives who say, hey, look, if that meeting goes for 2 days, there's no way that I'm going to attend. I'm just not going to go. It's inaccessible to me if we have to do a roll call vote between the meeting in the gym and the meeting online every single time we have an article. That's what we're hearing. Our town clerk is very concerned about it. And we would love you to think about whether there's any way that you could find some sort of exception for Brattleboro in this case, because it is just like the town meetings everywhere else. It's just that not everyone can show up and vote. It is just the elected members.
So which to me is a pretty significant difference, that not everyone can show up to vote. My question for you, so the piece that is, has anyone actually asked for a hybrid meeting in the?
Senator Collmore.
Yeah, please.
No, we have not had that request since you changed the legislation last year. We went ahead and warned the meeting without it because nobody had asked. It would cost us, we don't have the IT support and the tech support to be able to do something as fancy as you have it in the House. That's not something that we're set up and able to do. So, I didn't think that the intent when you made this open meeting law change was to encompass town meetings, but it was to encompass other public bodies, not the town meetings.
So there is a provision in the bill already that if that request is made, although this is language that's changing a little bit, that it must be met if it's feasible. Like, this is really meant to make sure that people who would otherwise not be able to attend a meeting, a public body of elected people can attend. But there is a caveat in that just like in our ADA, that's meant to protect individuals with disabilities, that you need to comply with that if it's possible. And so it seems to me that you could make the case that it is not. But that if all of a sudden you start getting a bunch of requests, then it's an evaluation of how do we make this possible? Because it seems that we have a lot of town members that can only attend if it's hybrid. But I think it's a pretty significant difference that only that group can vote, and you're voting on behalf of 99% of the population versus the 100% can show up and vote for themselves.
Senator Harrison.
Thanks. So I think it sounds like one of your concerns is just representative town meeting itself, that might not be seen as democratic as town.
No, I just think if people are voting on my behalf, I should be able to fully participate with it and know how they voted and follow that.
Right. So participating, so at a select board meeting, you wouldn't expect to be able to vote, but you would expect to be able to say something and,
Yes.
and give them and have a question.
Yes.
So something that the town could do would just be to have a telephone there, right? And have
That would be a
someone
requirement.
be able to call in and give their message. Because what happens right now is the folks on the other side of the screen, which is like a regular town meeting, they can speak if they're recognized by someone on the other side of the road. So I would think the town would be able to have some sort of device. I mean, it could be a computer, it could be a phone, so that someone who's watching online could write a message.
That would meet the requirement of the law.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay.
Like we
That's
put down testimony that
okay.
telephone, being able to be included by telephone does meet the requirement.
Oh, wonderful.
But just.
Okay, so John, you got that right?
Yeah, Senator White.
But just,
Can I just,
Yes.
oh,
Senator Collmore, yeah, one of the issues is just I want to make sure that the senator understands that people in the representative town meeting, their votes are not tallied on each article. You don't know who voted for what. It's typically a standing vote, and we'll have to go to some sort of really lengthy roll if it was actually a hybrid meeting where we had 30 or 40 people online and 70 or 80 in the room. And that just, if you can think through the logistics of that, it's just very awkward. It would extend the meetings quite significantly into two-day periods, and we're going to lose this form of direct democracy if we can't have a practical solution here. That's what we're really looking for.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, can I paraphrase, or what I'm hearing, John, is that the folks who represent members of RTM would need to be at the meeting. But then if a resident or anyone, not even just a resident, if anyone wanted to just give someone at RTM a call or a email, that would be conveyed. We have to figure out who to convey it to, probably the moderator, but
Yep.
just let the moderator know. But the actual voting would still take place within the physical confines of RTM.
that, if it was a member of the public that asked for the hybrid, then yes, I think that would meet it. If it was a member of the board that asked for it, then that would be trickier. But again, the way the law is structured is that if someone makes the request, I think it has to be within 72 hours. Everything you have to do it. You have to provide that if feasible. And it was meant to allow for remote attendance of board members or representatives as well. But to your earlier point, a select board, if I there's an issue on the select board's agenda that's really important to me and there's no way I can get there. And I am in that 72-hour window of time. And I say to the select board, I'd like to attend this meeting remotely. Unless it's infeasible for them to do so, they have to allow me to do that.
Oh, sure. And
And it's the same application
Right.
here again, because these are elected individuals, but it's not a blanket requirement that you hold a hybrid Zoom meeting. It's if someone reaches out and says, this article is really important to me, I want to attend remotely, some effort needs to be made to allow that.
right, to allow the input, not the voting, not voting. It's the voting remotely that is really hard to do. That's the part that's hard to do.
And the law,
But like when our select board meets, they have to be there in person.
So, can I just clarify?
I think.
Sure.
I thought 138 members all had to be there physically in the gym.
Exactly.
So you don't have anyone participating remotely at the moment?
We had a couple of years ago and it was horrendous.
Senator Collmore,
You did, and it was hard. I heard you testify.
Senator, we only need a quorum of the 138. Usually not all of them attend. And so one of our challenges has been trying to get enough in the room for a quorum. And if they start to see that, oh, these votes are going to take half an hour each for every article on the warrant, then we're going to lose people, we're going to lose the quorum, and it's just a mess. I mean, logistically, practically speaking, to do a hybrid at an annual town meeting is I don't see how we would do it.
Right, and so I actually would extend the opportunity for you to speak with the speaker and see if our House chamber could be available to you, because it is the.
Nobody's trying to.
I know, but it is the only space at the moment in this state that could accommodate you with the infrastructure, able to accommodate all the things that you're talking about. Because we can have we can have the 138 all in person, or we could have half of them here and half of them on screen. They could all vote, and then, trust me, it doesn't take half an hour, it takes 15 minutes. And with only 138, it takes even less time. It's very simple to do if you have the right infrastructure. And what I'm hearing you say is that you don't have the right infrastructure at the moment.
I'm hoping that the people at this table can come up with a solution and not make people drive them.
I know, but I'm saying we have a space where this kind of a meeting works, and it works well.
Senator White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to say a couple things. The first thing is that we don't require the legislature to be under open meeting law.
Right, but
And so my point is that we are a legislative body. The most similar example of a legislative body where people are elected
to represent.
to represent people is this meeting.
Yeah.
This is like a legislative meeting,
Yeah.
more than it is a regular town meeting even. So if you don't think it's town meeting enough to meet, not qualify, to not already be covered, it's legislative enough. We don't have our own requirements for open meeting law. It's kind of the mix of the two. And I think if anything, it's double jeopardy. You should be qualified for both and not have to, and to be able to have you be separate. The only other thing I'll say is, the meeting that is happening is not that people will, if I'm understanding your meeting correctly, I can't just show up as a layperson if I'm not an elected representative and weigh in on an issue.
No, but you can raise your hand behind the
Exactly.
ropes, and if they want
Exactly.
to acknowledge you, they.
Exactly. So we're not, there's not some participation aspect that is, that is being missed. So I guess I just don't see a lot of utility in this beyond us being able to kind of have like a symbolic victory on requiring all towns to have their meetings be open. It just doesn't seem worth it to me.
Senator Gales.
so I think the legislature should be under open meeting law, and we do everything via hybrid already. First of all. Second of all, I also think requiring people to show up to be in person is a barrier to certain people running to be in this elected position. This was
Sure.
one of the arguments that I had back when I suggested that all select boards should be mandatory hybrid. And the compromise we came to is they don't have to be mandatory hybrid unless someone asks. And so given that this is an elected group, I think having that same application, they don't have to be hybrid unless someone asks. seemed perfectly reasonable to me. And if the board of people elected are deeply concerned that shifting to being online, I suspect they won't ask for that. But I also remember in the House when we did non-roll call votes, we used the little hand raise feature. People just counted hands. It didn't take half an hour. It took 5 minutes.
And then we had to buy that software because they couldn't do.
No,
it
we had to get rid of the
properly.
software because
We went through so many software changes
We-
that cost us significant money. I'd hate to make an individual town have to bear that burden.
so we started with the software and it was deemed to not be acceptable under some sort of freedom of information. So we switched to the hand raising and then we switched to just voice votes.
Oh, and then we got Evermore was a whole, or
That was the beginning that
Yeah.
we decided we didn't want to keep doing because of Freedom of Information Act stuff.
So let me suggest this. We're not gonna solve the issue today, all of the other stuff in 59. I am of the same opinion as Senator White that we should make some sort of exception for the Brattleboro situation. If the definition of hybrid includes just having a phone for somebody to call in, then we may need to go no further and we may be fine.
I think that's already a
is.
possibility.
Yeah,
If
the
that's
other
already-
issue I have,
That's
John,
that exists.
is this year, and I don't know if it already is in law, then all you gotta do is put a phone. I don't think you should order a phone for one meeting and then have the phone company take it out. You can have somebody's cell phone number published and they can interact that way, or a computer, or however else we're gonna do it. When is your representative town meeting this year?
Senator, it is on March 22nd.
Oh, well, then we have even more time to sort of chew this up again, but I think you're gonna be okay, one way or the other, whether we include that phrase, which is in the bill, exempting representative town meetings, or whether we use the definition of hybrid, and we'll have to talk to our attorney to make sure that that's what we're all talking about. I think you'll be okay either way, so, I hope you have a good meeting.
It also only goes into effect if someone asks for it. You don't just proactively have to do it.
That's very helpful.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of that. That's great. And just another fun fact, Brattleboro is considering, we're looking at a charter, we're doing our charter review. So, we may not choose to continue to do RTM. It may end up being regular town.
Oh.
Oh, is that on the charter discussion?
It's a conversation, right, John?
Yes, yeah, it's that's an issue that they're debating, and a decision like this, if you didn't exempt representative town meeting, it may mean that they would want to move to a regular town meeting form of government here.
Okay.
But I do urge you to check out one of our meetings, just look at it and see what you think.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Senator.
you. I appreciate
I
it.
really appreciate it.
No.
John, thank you very much. Have the rest of the day off. Take the rest of the day off.
Thanks so much, Senator Collmore.
The
Committee.
caveats that it's only if someone requests it and only if it is feasible are important. Like it is not a blanket, you have to do it.
That's critical. So
Yeah.
thank you.
it is critical and.
That's
I think
worth my
you are-
time.
Or fine either way, because it seems to be not feasible and you could just have a phone.
And
Right.
people aren't asking for it.
Right.
And people aren't asking.
And I would
for
just
anything.
have a phone anyway.
Oh, wait, why are
And
we?
there's always a house chamber.
Oh, this is the 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Had a minor moment,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
John.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Samantha Sheehan from VLCT. Come on up.
Thank you. She could go with her now.
We missed our chance to make an announcement.
Oh,
No, that was.
no, if I do it on the floor.
We're on the floor at 4.
Yeah.
Administrative session.
Pretend floor.
I don't know if that'll speed the process up or not. I think we've done our due diligence on the other bill. We're just,
Are you on the floor?
well,
No,
there's
hi,
a, well, I think we're up.
Phil
I
Baru,
don't
the
know.
lieutenant governor, and the secretary are on.
I mean, I'd be glad to run upstairs if you think it's gonna get on the notice calendar any quicker,
I mean,
more quickly.
It's worth
Never.
asking. I think it's worth our taking 1 second for you to run up and ask.
Okay.
so
How about a 10-minute break, or
All right,
are we delaying people from doing other things that they'd rather be doing? I guess
This
that's
was
sort of-
a